After World War I, it was known as shell shock. By the end of World War II, battle fatigue. And in later deployments, it became known as operational exhaustion. Today we call it PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
These are the casualties of the spirit, the troubled in mind, men who are damaged emotionally. Born and bred in peace, educated to hate war, they were overnight plunged into sudden and terrible situations. Every man has his breaking point, and these, in the fulfillment of their duties as soldiers, were forced beyond the limit of human endurance.
At ease, men. On behalf of the commanding officer and his staff of Mason General Hospital, I want to extend a hearty welcome to all of you on your return to the United States. There's no need to be alarmed at the presence of these cameras, as they're making a photographic record of your progress at this hospital from the date of admission to the date of discharge.
Here are men who tremble, men who cannot sleep, men with pains that are nonetheless real because they are of mental origin, men who cannot remember, paralyzed men whose paralysis is dictated by the mind. However different the symptoms, these things they have in common: unceasing fear and apprehension, a sense of impending disaster, a feeling of hopelessness and utter isolation.
My name is Terrence Pop. I've been in the Army since I was 17 years old, dealing with this PTSD issue for quite some time. As a young buck in the Army, I thought it was all bullshit and it was just in their heads and they could get over it, and it was silly. And I decided that I was going to talk about the PTSD because in reality, that's really the only thing that helps take fuel from its fire. I got kind of tired of going graveside to friends and comrades and watching them get their taps in 21 when they took their own lives. But at the end of the day, the PTSD specter got them. And I really hope that my words reach out to you out there. And if I could save but just one, it'll all be worth it. So you guys take it easy and enjoy the film.
PTSD to me means it's really, I would just say, it's an occupational injury that needs to be addressed. It needs to be looked at by government with regards to presumption clauses to get help ahead of time before it becomes too damaging. And we need to find ways within our organizations, whether it be the fire service, the police service, ambulance, military, we need to find ways right now to acknowledge it, understand it, read and recognize the signs and symptoms, and help these people before it becomes too progressive.
We have to understand that we're all human beings, and the greatest resources that we have are our members.
We go into our professions to help people and to basically give back. It's not something you go into lightly. It's something that's either in you or isn't in you. Trauma is your body's natural response to an unnatural event. And I believe PTSD is the exact same thing, but it's the accumulation. How do we protect the people of our towns or cities if we're not protecting our own people?
But at the end of the day, you're all family, and you know what? You're all stick together, and you're all there to help each other. So, and that's what we're trying to do. It's been working good. From where we were when I first got here to where we are now, there's been a lot of changes.
I started to realize, wow, not only could I have been killed in this position, and I've been in lots of positions before, but it started to make me think a little more. I think it started to bring back thoughts that, I thought I had dealt with.
Especially during medical, if there are bad medical incidents that we are responding to, especially heart attack and things like that, and motor vehicle incidents when somebody passed away.
I pulled up over the crest of the hill to see what looked like a complete war zone. There was debris everywhere, there was fire everywhere. There was a vehicle flipped upside down on its roof on fire. I started to run towards what I saw was an upside down pickup fully involved and a semi-truck, and the semi-truck was in the ditch. As I was approaching, a gentleman said to me that the semi-truck driver was fine, somebody had already checked on them, but there was somebody in the vehicle. I was trying to see if we could gain access. The cab was fully involved. At that point, we did have one fire extinguisher, but another bystander had used that and spelled it off on the back of the vehicle as opposed to the cab. The one individual I happened to be working with, his wife came back from speaking with the truck driver to make sure he was okay. She said, "We can't sit and watch this person burn to death." I had told him that I was a firefighter and, we would try our best. It was at that point that she turned to me and she grabbed me by the shirt collar and said, "If you're a firefighter, you need to do something." It kicked into me that I now was not doing something for the individual in the vehicle, but I was doing something for her mental psyche. I think it was just human nature in me. I pulled down my hoodie sleeves, I put my hoodie over my head. I crawled under the flames of the vehicle to see if there was anything I could do, and basically just to alleviate her, to know that we had tried everything. It was at that point that I was yelling, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me?" Loud enough for her to hear from roadside that this was taking place, that we were trying everything we could possibly do so that she felt better. And it was at that point a voice from inside the vehicle said, "Get me out, it's hot in here." There was nothing I could do. I tried to reach in, I couldn't reach through the flames, I couldn't see the person through the smoke. I told the individual, "I'll be right back." I was trying to find a fire extinguisher. I crawled out from under the flames and went towards a semi-truck, thinking that there would be another fire extinguisher on that truck. And I probably got approximately 20 feet away from the vehicle when it exploded.
Sometimes we talk about a moral injury. I want to help, people are looking to me to help, and I can't. So that sense of moral distress is really profound for a lot of first responders. And my background in resilience comes from a couple different perspectives. One being recently retired as an RCMP officer myself after 23 years in the Mounted Police. So I have my own firsthand experience dealing with trauma, difficult situations, and some of the challenges in an organization. And the other lens that I bring to this topic is that of a registered psychologist.
This was an injury that was brought on over time due to the course of my occupation and the things that I saw and witnessed and partook in.
We can always call on the RCMP because we know they have a team, so does BCAS. So, and right now in Zone 5, for the fire chief of BC, we are looking at setting up a team in Zone 5 of different firefighters across the zone, that if something were to happen inside the fire hall and people are suffering from PTSD and they need help, it'd just be a matter of picking up the phone. Then we could have other fire department members from different fire halls coming down over here.
My passion is, well, first and foremost, obviously, my kids. But along that same line would be sports and hockey. I've been watching, playing, and involved in sports since I was able to walk. But the hockey would be probably, other than like I said, my kids and family, would be my number one passion. I think honestly that does give me hope. It gives me hope every day that, I want to know that our brothers or sisters are out there in the world doing a job, doing a very good job, and health and wellness from their end of it is being taken care of as well.
I've been in the Army since I was 17 years old. I served as an infantry soldier, an airborne paratrooper, an airborne ranger from the Ranger Regiment, and a Green Beret. I've seen 3 wars, suited up for 2, and almost lost my life in 2 wars. The past couple years, I've received a lot of emails in regards to PTSD and how I cope. God damn it! But it's starting to affect a lot of good people and some friends I know and some dear friends close to me. I'm not getting ignored anymore. Do you have to go to war to get PTSD? My answer to you is no, ass bag. I've been having issues with it since 1989. I jumped into Panama, the 2nd Ranger Battalion. I get panic attacks. Like, I know I'm perfectly safe. There's no reason to get a panic attack, but I do. It took me a long time to get beyond that mindset. That basically, in the back of my mind, I have a high level of bandwidth being taken just to deal with the PTSD issues. You have seen 3 wars. How do you cope? 1, booze. 2, meditation. 3, modified insanity, is from here. And 4, laughing your ass off. Helps a lot.
And in my experience with first responders, what's the most common way for them to numb out? Alcohol. You know, and I say that the challenge with alcohol, of course, is that it works. If you have enough to drink, you will get numbed out. Of course, it's at a cost, but that's another big risk. 70% of people with PTSD also have an addiction.
So I've thought about this particular situation in depth, and I've had to combat the symptoms for a quarter of a century. I think I have a little bit of experience weathering the storm like any storm. Okay, you're gonna have a good day, you're gonna have a bad day. Maybe it'll be a thick storm, maybe it'll be light, and on a couple times, you're gonna have to run for cover. You have environmental and situational. Environmental is your mind has to adapt to the insanity that you're operating in. Basically, you're in the box. You're getting mortared, you're getting shot at, you gotta roll down roads that have IEDs. Over there, you hate being there, you hate everything about it. Then you come home and you wanna go back. Guess what? Environmental PTSD, you got it. There was a time back in the day that I didn't really want to be here anymore. I got back from Iraq in the beginning of '05. I was recovering from a TBI. It was fairly significant. It took about a year and a half for it to actually rectify. And it was like one day I woke up and it was like the whole world was now in focus. You know, I was getting some gut feelings that my now ex-wife was doing some nefarious shit. And it just shocked me. And it just threw me in this horrible spiral of depression. And it got to a point where I was actually like, I'd actually actively made plans to smoke myself. And before I did it, we made a video, Purple Heart's Final Beat, which basically was the script of how I was gonna do it. About 4 or 5 days before, that was to happen, an old commander of mine donned his best attire and walked out to the Holly National Cemetery and blew his head off. We made about 6 or 8 other videos under secondclasscitizen.org. I did a 180 and I turned it from depression to comedy, and I made Redonkulous.com. I mean, like, the comedy that I do gives me hope because it's my therapy.
You gotta find your joy. You gotta find your redonkulous.
You know, when I first started it, you know, I was talking to a therapist. I was paying this guy like $150 a session. And he would just laugh his ass off the entire time.
What are your mental tricks you use to live a normal life? Wow, I am so not normal. It's unbelievable. Oh, I'm just a dude in a beer in a basement with a whiteboard. Okay, you gotta find your redonkulous and you gotta live it.
It certainly beats, you know, taking your rifle and voting from the rooftops. Nobody likes that, so it is what it is.
What I really like is meditation. That really works. You might want to give it a shot. Winning meditation. No, for self-medication.
I have no fear of death nor pain, and for this world I hold nothing but the deepest of disdain. My only earthly fear is that which I may come to be upon my time in the infantry. For in the uncharted darkness of my future, a monster lies in wait for me, armed with his slew of wounds and misery, but fiercer still through both life and limb. 'Tis I who lie in wait for him.
Lord, give me life.
8:45 a.m. Roberts walks two of his children to a nearby bus stop. He returns home and, after his wife leaves, writes several suicide notes. 10 a.m. Roberts drives a borrowed pickup truck to West Nickel Mines School, a one-room Amish schoolhouse about a mile from his home. He brings a 9mm semi-automatic pistol, a 12-gauge shotgun, a 30-06 rifle, 600 rounds of ammunition. 10:25 a.m. Roberts releases all 15 male students, a pregnant woman and 3 women with infant children. Roberts lines up all 10 remaining girls, students aged 6 to 13, in front of the blackboard, ties them together, and barricades the doors with lumber. Shortly before 11 a.m., Maria Roberts arrives at home and discovers one of her husband's suicide notes. 11:07 a.m. Roberts calls 911 on his cell phone and says he'll begin shooting if police don't leave the scene in 10 seconds. Police trace the call to his phone and try to call him back, but are unable to get through. Moments later, Roberts begins rapidly shooting his victims, firing a dozen rounds from the pistol and 3 from the shotgun. Police storm the school. When they discover the doors are barricaded, they enter through the windows. They find Roberts dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. 2 girls, Naomi Rose Ebersol, 7, and Mary Ann Stoltzfus Fisher, 13, are found dead at the scene. A third girl, Anna May Stoltzfus, 12, is pronounced dead on arrival at Lancaster General Hospital, Tuesday, October 3rd. 2 other victims, Lena Zook Miller, 8, and Mary Liz Miller, 7, succumb to their injuries at Christiana Hospital in Delaware and at the Hershey Medical Center, bringing the death toll to 5.
The one that really stuck the hardest with me was the Nickel Mine school shooting. My involvement included hauling one of the Amish fathers down to Christiana Hospital in Delaware from here in Lancaster County to identify his daughter, who I was told was brain dead, and that Dad was going to have to basically say, yes, that's my daughter, and go ahead and pull the plug from life support. But I was not allowed to tell him this. Him and his brother in the back of our squad truck, he's talking to his brother about how strong of a girl she is, what she had for breakfast, that, you know, she was a fighter, she was going to survive this. I asked him how old his daughters were, and they were the same age as my daughters. So it really struck home. And the biggest thing that I can remember from that ride was looking in the rearview mirror at his eyes and just seeing empty eyes. post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's something that I was diagnosed with several years ago as a result of 30 plus years in the fire service. For me, it was a cumulative effect of a lot of calls over 30 years. What really brought it to the forefront was my marriage was falling apart. For some reason, I felt that it was important to talk to somebody that would make sure that I'm doing the right thing. Get basically somebody else's opinion. And in the process of that, we ended up talking about some PTSD related things that at first I shrugged off as a fire instructor, saying, I've taught about that, I know all about that, that's not me. And we ended up going down that road and basically opened up some doors that I didn't realize I had.
I'll stay. It's suffocating, but I'll stay. I feel.
Kind of liked photography when I was in high school, and when I got out of high school and started working, it was one of those things I didn't really have much time for. So I put the camera down, went on with life. And after I was diagnosed with PTSD, as I started to work through some things, somewhere along the line I picked my camera up again and started playing around. And it's grown into, I guess you could call it a crutch, if you will. It's that go-to thing that if I'm having a bad day, I'll grab my camera and go out and start taking pictures of things and looking at the results, and that gets myself kind of reoccupying the mind, I guess. What gives me hope now is helping others with PTSD. I started a Facebook page called Firefighter PTSD as a place for me to kind of journal my trip. What it ended up becoming was a place that others started dropping in on, and we were kind of leaning on each other. That has morphed into a closed group that is a little more open with conversation. You're not alone. There's a lot of us out here. There's a lot of us going through the same issues, and we're firefighters. There's nothing we can't overcome together. Don't give up.
Comes to nothing in time. Why do I stay when it feels like I'm worlds away?
Fired. Suspect down. Request EMT immediately. EMT is en route.
PTSD to me is many things, actually. It's a culmination of things that we have cluttered away in the back of our mind that we don't want to deal with. We didn't have a whole lot of information as to what we were going into, so we were prepared for anything. Again, we're at the end of a 12-hour shift. So it's not that you don't really care all that much, it's just that you're exhausted at this point. And when we walked into the scene, thinking that this would be fairly routine, it wasn't. It was extraordinary. The death of a child was involved. There were many other people there on the scene, as well as extended family of this victim. And the situation just got to a point where dealing with different emotions, my own, my partner's, the victim's family, became too heavy for me to support any longer. I had done this over the years, and it seems you can go on for the longest time supporting the unsupportable, and you feel almost as though you're Teflon and everything just bounces off of you. But there was this, for some inexplicable reason, this one time, which was not particularly more violent or more repulsive than any others that I had done in the past. It was just the one that I completely broke down. My fabric just started unraveling and coming apart. I felt as though I was no longer in control. I didn't know how I would react to the next situation. And that it really frightened me. It made me realize that I was completely out of control and had no way of regaining control. And I think that's when I realized that I didn't realize I had PTSD, but I did realize that I had a mental illness that I had been dealing with for probably for years and hadn't addressed. And it was time. It was time to do something about it.
Are you okay? Did you want to talk about it? I see you've had the call from hell.
I had the good fortune to be trained in eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, or EMDR therapy, in the fall of 1993.
Oh, I've been there myself.
I had seen, previous to the psychologist that I found who was able to help me with EMDR, I had seen 2 other psychologists. The first one, she was more like the kind of person that would be, I see, and how did that make you feel? Yes, oh, and make notations, but there was no conversation. And so I didn't go anywhere with that treatment. So I saw another psychologist who was actually breaking down and crying when I was explaining to her like the things that I was dealing with. She couldn't fathom how a human could deal with that. And so I kind of, after those 2, I thought, no one can help me because no one understands. 2 professionals in this field don't understand. But thank God that I found this 3rd psychologist who used EMDR. And it was like the key that fit the lock, and everything just opened for me.
One of the key reasons I love doing EMDR therapy is because it works, and it works quickly. So post-traumatic stress disorder is the label that we have for a diagnosis following an overwhelming traumatic event for people. And it's comprised of several key symptom clusters. People are getting intrusive experiences, memories, flashbacks of the event, and their entire physiological system has become hyper-aroused. And diagnostically, it only comes into play 30 days after an event. If you have these symptom clusters before that, then it's something called acute stress disorder. But if it's persisting, then it becomes what is called post-traumatic stress disorder. RCMP members, Vancouver Police, emergency response, armed forces veterans, many of whom, as a consequence of their life experiences and their careers, have been traumatized. After I'd been using the method for a couple of years, I thought, well, I'll look back at my files of the first group of people I've done EMDR. So it happened just by a fluke. There were exactly 200 at that time, in around 1995 or 6. So I looked back over the files, and I saw about 20 files that I wasn't sure how things had turned out. So then I beat myself up, as therapists are wont to do, until I realized, hey, 180 out of 200, that's a 90% success rate. I'm thinking it's probably running over 95% in the last 10 years anyways.
Walked into recruitment wide-eyed and wet behind the ears, with a shiny new uniform, anticipation and fear.
If you are in that place that feels as though absolutely no one knows where you are, what you're going through, I've been there, and I'm not alone. Other people have been there as well. And as dark and as alone as you feel right now, there is hope. There is a way out. You just have to believe in yourself.
I joined the Air Force when I was 17 years old. I did my tour in the Air Force. I came out of the Air Force, I joined the Marine Corps. Still wasn't done with the military, so I joined the Army. And I know there's not a lot of 3-branch veterans out there, but I guess per se I have 3 different branches to pull from for my PTSD issues.
What is PTSD to you, Will?
First of all, with me, I hate the D on the end of it. I really do. I've never liked that.
We talk about PTSD, but there's a lot of us in the field that don't like the D in PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. we're learning more and more that it's not a disorder, that someone's thinking is off or there's something wrong with them innately, that it's very much an injury. That's where I like the military's term, operational stress injury. We're learning that trauma affects the brain and it affects the chemicals in their body. It's not a moral failing. It's an involuntary physiological injury that has, a very predictable group of symptoms that go along with it. So more and more we're talking about operational stress injuries or post-traumatic stress reactions, normal reactions to horrific events.
One of the most common and debilitating side effects of post-traumatic stress disorder is a condition known as hyperarousal.
I suffer from what's called hyperarousal, PTSD.
According to Dorland's Medical Dictionary, hyperarousal is a state of increased psychological and physiological tension, marked by such effects as reduced pain tolerance, anxiety.
I think about things way too much. I can't get my brain to shut down.
Exaggeration of startle responses.
I'm very jittery.
Insomnia.
I don't sleep well. I have insomnia really bad.
Fatigue and accentuation of personality traits.
I'm not going to sit here and try to sugarcoat anything, but it's real. I deal with it on a daily basis. I've been dealing with it for 27 years now.
Those affected by hyperarousal are hyperalert, left on edge in a state that is taxing on both mind and body. A person suffering from this condition is essentially trapped in a perpetual state of the primitive survival mode known as fight or flight.
It doesn't have to be war-related. It doesn't have to be that you're a veteran of the military. PTSD can affect people in every different way. First responders, military, doctors, policemen, it doesn't matter.
There's my backdrop sound right there for police. And
what's this guy going through tonight? When you have to deal with traumatic issues and things of that nature, it's going to affect you one way or the other. If I can say anything to anybody, get online, Google, do whatever you have to do to find the help you need. There are outlets, the VA has outlets, and if you get to the point where it's so bad, please pick up a phone and call a suicide hotline. Right now, the military says in the States that we're losing 22 a day. That's what they're reporting, but it's more like 40. 40 suicides a day are taking place with our service members, with our first responders, and things of that nature, and that's got to stop.
Okay, so here's the deal. I've been nominated for these 22 push-ups a day to bring awareness to the 22 suicides that are being committed every day by soldiers, our troops. So here's the deal. I don't know if I can do 22, but I'm committed to the project. I'm committed to the cause, so
I think there need to be more resources. It's really easy to shove shit under carpet and, out of sight, out of mind, but that's not the way to deal with PTSD. It can't be out of mind because it's in our mind.
12, 13, 14. This is the guy. Put your hands together for Mr. Will C.
I started a group called the Veterans of Comedy. We are all military veterans. They're now stand-up comedians. I wrote a whole series called Combat to Comedy, where I'm now using comedy to help soldiers that are coming home, that are dealing with PTSD issues, to be able to find a way to laugh at their situation. I mean, is it funny? No, but you can always find the humor in everything. To really just live my life in 5-minute increments. If I can get through the next 5 minutes, and then I'll get through the next 5 minutes, and the next 5 minutes, and before you know it, tomorrow is here, and it's another day. That's my life. That's my story. Whether it be spoken word, maybe poetry, or even, comedy, finding a way, an outlet to be able to get your thoughts across, to get, I guess to get the demons out of your head. That's really what it's all about.
The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq are the longest combat operations since Vietnam. Studies report that as many as 2/3 of veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder are not receiving treatment.
My name is Ray Kinlock. I joined the RCMP way back in 1976. Troop 2 of 1976. Before I retired from the RCMP, I had 37 and a half years with the Mounties. I believe they're referred to nowadays as operational stress injuries, and like PTSD is the most serious one of that. I've never experienced PTSD myself, but I have seen a variety of members over the years, and myself have experienced various stress-related injuries, or if you want to call them that, over the things that we've either did or saw or participated in.
How important is debriefing?
Very important. Now, when I first joined the Mounties, there was very little or any debriefing, formal debriefings, but that become more and more important over the years after I got to different detachments and involved in different levels of crime. Debriefings are certainly the norm after any major incident in the RCMP now. Very important for members to educate themselves with the signs and symptoms of any kind of a stress-related injury. Our initial training in Depot, back in Regina there, it'll give you the basics for how to handle stress and stuff like that. They expose you to different scenarios back in training there. Gives you some kind of an idea what you could be facing out there in the field. But they're limited in a training situation. They can't actually put you under fire. They can't actually expose you to the blood and guts and the gore of perhaps a murder scene or a bad accident or anything like that. But it's amazing how your training that you receive kicks in at the scene, at significant accident scenes or murder scenes or whatever. You could go to work anytime as a policeman and not come home. A routine day at the police station could turn into a bad day at the police station. The most serious incident that ever really bothered me was an incident when I was stationed in Princeton, BC. We were called to a provincial park just north of Princeton. I attended as the most senior member from Princeton to lead this investigation into what turned out to be 2 dead babies, newborn babies, that were actually placed in an outhouse at this provincial park. That bothered me at the time there because I just could not fathom why anyone would put 2 newborn babies in a garbage bag and then drop them into an outhouse. It was just beyond me, and I had a little bit of trouble with that. If you think that you need some help, then the best thing to do is go to a professional counseling service at the very least, or go to your family doctor at the very least and say, hey, I need some help getting through this.
These 2 unidentified newborns, later known as Princeton's twin angels, were laid to rest with the help of the community. A Princeton funeral home provided the caskets. The RCMP served as pallbearers.
PTSD changed my life, and I don't know which trauma, which incident. I mean, do we talk about when I was a kid with an abusive alcoholic father that my mom did the midnight move on? Do I talk about when I was sexually molested? Do I talk about, what do you talk about? Do I talk about it in the forms of the military? I will say that the one thing that changed me was my first tour in Kosovo. We were Roto Zero. I was just 18 years old, private, and we were in an area where they had a lot of the genocide was going on between the Serbians and the Albanians. We were parked off the side of the road, and there was this massive funeral procession going along. And being the young, very ignorant private I was, I said to my crew commander, I said, what are they doing? You know, where's the adults? Are they burying their dogs? Because there was nothing but kids. There wasn't no adults. My section commander lost his marbles. He was very upset. And he explained to me, he goes, where are you there, private? And it all came sinking, and I became aware that I wasn't in the army, I wasn't just a soldier, I was actually in a theater of war when people's lives were altered. So I think that would best define the changing moment in my life. You know, I was getting emotional thinking about hope, you know. Hope coincides with, you don't know hope until you know true powerlessness, right? I can tell you, I've felt powerless. I know how it feels to be sad, to feel fear, to have anxiety, to be overwhelmed with this chaos in my head and my chest and not knowing up from down, left to right. I know what it feels to not know what a feeling is, to have that chaos intertwined with my sense of just feeling and preventing that connection. I know that feeling. I know what it feels like to be numb. It sucks. It sucks that when my daughter severely hurts herself and is emotional crying, that I'm stone cold, and I won't even hug my own daughter. That is disconnected. Or when my wife says that I feel like I'm not even here with you. And I turn my back and I'll go out and go drinking with the boys. Or even just me, myself. Absolutely 100% numb and disconnected. I was told when I was actually in treatment that the hardest and the longest distance I'll ever travel in my life is between my head and my chest and connecting the two. Instead of always staying in my head, and I say staying with the triplets, me, myself, and I, is actually getting connected in my chest with those feelings, with those emotions. When I was on the top of my stairway, ultimately contemplating the ultimate selfish acts and taking my life, I was pretty fucking sad. I was pretty destroyed. I still felt. And I think, for me, one of the hardest things to do was pick up that 1,000-pound phone, talk to a family, which was my brother. I think, for me, it's being okay being full of fear. It's being okay not feeling good. It's being okay and it being normal of having these really negative, hard, heavy feelings weighing me down. That's life. It's okay to feel it. We're taught, we're trained, we're strongly suggested and guided to turn on, off that switch. So we don't, when I felt fear, sadness, well, it wasn't normal. Push it away. Grab a bottle, drink it away. When I was lonely, I'd go to a bar, fight, get the adrenaline going. I was scared of feelings. So when I did have these negative, hardcore feelings, I was even more scared. I wasn't normal, I was different. So I think the biggest message I would have to say to anybody that's going through a troubling time would be, it's okay to feel what you're feeling. Yeah. Pick up a 1,000-pound phone. And just like you're alive on the right side of the dirt, it's okay to walk away from what you're doing right now and go get help. PTSD is the broad spectrum. Our mission statement is to improve the quality of life, to bring people out of the darkness. And it's the family context. It's not just the individual, it's not just the couple, it's the family. I can share through my own story. I can bring my daughters and my wife, and they will intimately share with you what my PTSD has done to them, the rippling effect. Just as we stand by this river, my PTSD it's a family disease. It's affected everybody. So LOPTSD, our wish is to help the family structure. Now, whether that's building a park in a community, whether it's helping someone by fundraising and supporting their initiative to seek some type of counseling, or whether it's supporting in any way we know how. I think of love. I think of that warm feeling that gives when my daughters give me that amazing hug. My wife giving me that look of acceptance of who I am. Tomorrow that the sun's going to rise, I want to stay on this side of the dirt.
I'm a real live girl, not a marionette. The boy I love's my greatest joy. Don't tell lies.
PTSD was a very negative term and was a very negative thing, and it's not something that, you know, even with the stigma attached to it, it wasn't something that I wanted to be associated with. As I began to learn what it was, understanding that it's an injury, and just like any other physical injury, it's an injury that you can receive treatment for and come out even better sometimes on the other side.
I am flesh and blood, and when I fall, I bleed a real far cry from a word.
RCMP members and people who do frontline service work there's a bunch of different events, a bunch of different incidents that, I don't want to say define, but certainly change you in sometimes small ways and sometimes very big ways. It was late at night and I was coming out of, you know, my zone and entering into a different zone on my way home. And I noticed a vehicle. The bridge that I came up to is a one-lane bridge. And there was a vehicle that was at the front of the bridge. And I thought it was just an abandoned vehicle and, you know, could deal quickly with it and then carry on. And when I exited the vehicle, two men that I hadn't noticed before came around the vehicle and began to approach me. And in that moment, I had one of those times where everything just kind of slowed down. And I remember very vividly still the two of them coming out from behind the vehicle. I recognized one immediately. I had dealt with him before. He didn't particularly like police and was known to be violent. And, you know, in that time that it slowed down, can see them making eye contact with each other. Not a word was spoken between anyone. And I just remember saying to myself in that moment, please, not in the river, I don't want to be cold when I die. A police vehicle came around the corner for no reason. That member two was out of their zone and shouldn't have been there. So, you know, divine intervention, whatever, luck, you know, whatever you want to call it. But and the two fellas ran off. But it was defining in that moment, obviously, on a bunch of different levels. I believe that something very bad was going to happen, that, you know, I wasn't going to make it through that moment. And obviously that has stuck with me. But the hardest thing to get over or work through was, you know, who was that person that didn't do anything in that moment? Because I've been in other confrontations, I've been in other conflicts, I've gone to other calls and never hesitated, or, you know, always knew what I was supposed to do next. And, you know, it always came very, very easily, almost, knowing what to do. And to have that moment where I didn't do anything to protect myself, you know, and it really breached a trust within myself. You know, I received another call a few months later of a male that had overdosed. And he was in a house downstairs and walked into this house and went down into the basement. And there's no furniture or anything. There's just a blue mattress laying on the floor. And this man from the bridge that I had recognized was laying there. And he was deceased. You know, I waited for, you know, this sense of peace to kind of wash over me because, you know, I guess I'd won in some way. I was still here and he wasn't, but yet I was still angry. I think in some respect I was angry because he went too easily. He passed away in the middle of the night, and here I am still carrying around this big baggage of what happened that night. And I felt like he got off easy because I'm still here and I'm still struggling and I'm still suffering. It was also very difficult for me because, you know, it's labeled now moral injury. But, you know, I referred initially, before it had a label, of personal truth and who I am as an individual. And that, you know, wishing death on somebody else in order to make me feel better goes against my personal truth. I was so angry at the time that I just wanted to feel better. I just wanted something, and I thought that was maybe something that would make me feel better. And when it didn't happen, when I didn't feel better, even though this threat had been, you know, resolved or taken away, I had major resentment. It was a game changer for me. It changed who I was, and it changed my perception again of myself.
The Warhorse Symposium, I came and met Deanna in 2013. For me, it's about paying it forward to people that work in my industries. 18 years of 911 dispatch and then becoming a supervisor. I had a lot of stress, but a career that also made me feel extremely proud to serve my community and proud to serve with my brothers and sisters. Who is the person behind the uniform? That became really, really important to me. And I think that people in our industries, these frontline service providers, we identify so much with that uniform that sometimes it gets out of balance with who the person is behind the uniform. Using the elements of being out by the horses to really focus on our mental awareness and our mindfulness and our emotional intelligence, I thought this is something that we have to get out there, even on a small scale like what we're starting, these symposiums. You open it up and it's amazing to me how many people sign up and they're kind of resistant at first. When they first come, they don't know what to expect. But it's not a place to come and be judged or to be pushed so far to your boundaries that you don't feel like you have any control over what is happening. It's a place actually to come and be in a safe environment with people who have walked the talk, who have been there in the trenches with you, that know what it feels like to face the challenges of working in these industries. We bring in professionals that can offer some services that maybe people haven't even thought of. Sometimes these alternative modalities become that one thing that somebody grabs and says, hey, that works for me. And this gives them a chance to try it in a safe, non-judgmental environment. We don't use the horses as props, we use the horses as partners. So it's getting people out of that space of looking at a task that you have to do something with a horse, and getting them back into being present in the moment and getting a horse to work with you. Sometimes I find people that have been through trauma or have had stresses in their life find it easier to connect with a horse or an animal than it is with another person. And that's because we always wear those masks out in public, and when the uniform helps us hide behind that as well. We have to be this certain persona when we wear those uniforms. So the horse acts very differently when those uniforms are off and we're just us in this present, in this moment. And it really helps people connect with the prey side. Humans are made up of both prey and predator instincts. Horses are prey animals. And so, for example, wolves are predators. A lot of times when we're out there in the world and having to be these big, tough people that are taking charge of everything and always on, we're in the predator side of our psyche. And then to switch working with horses, we have to get into the prey, and getting in touch with that creates the balance.
My name's Carl Waggett. I've been a Cambridge firefighter for 15 years. Greetings from Ontario. Guys, if I only have 60 seconds to talk to you about post-traumatic stress disorder, let me speak quickly. Guys, if there's one thing I need you to understand in full color about the battle with PTSD, is that it's no different than any other battle that's ever been fought in history. Every single battle is won or lost before anybody steps on the field. The more you know about your enemy, the more your chances of winning increases. It's always been that way. It will always be that way. Guys, I want you to think about the incredible things you do at work, some of the obstacles that you overcome. You overcome these obstacles because you have standard operating guidelines that show you step by step how to dominate any situations that's thrown at you. Guys, understand now that there are internal SOGs that will help you dominate the internal wars, no different than you dominate the external wars. Guys, this technology is here. I implore you to find it. If not, we'll find a way to get it to you. I wish you all the best on your journey, and understand that it's more than a winnable fight. Take care of yourself.
Hey guys, Simon Gillard here from Sydney, Australia. I was a detective sergeant in the New South Wales Police Force, and I lost my career due to post-traumatic stress disorder. And systemically for me, I succumbed to depression. So there is hope at the end of the tunnel, and what I want to share with you is that I lost my identity, but I built it back up again in a way that I've just authored, and it's come out as being a bestseller, and it's called Life Sentence, A Police Officer's Battle with PTSD. But the message and the key message I really want to get across to everyone out there with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, or mental illness is early intervention. If you have the signs and symptoms that you're not coping and that you need help, please go and get help, because it doesn't go away. And it's so important that you go and get that necessary help. The sooner the better. So take care, everyone, and please, I hope you listen to what I have to say in regards to that, because I've been there. You just put your hand up and you're far stronger to do so. So bye from Sydney, Australia, and thanks for listening. See you guys. Bye.
Hi, I'm Justin Jordan, author of the book Then I Cried, Stories of a Mortuary NCO. I'm coming to you from San Antonio, Texas. A lot of us have been in that dark place where you feel like you're on an island all alone. Well, I'm here to tell you you're not alone. Pick up that phone, reach out, ask for help.
So people can get PTSD from a single traumatic event. How many traumatic events are first responders exposed to in the course of their career? Very often dozens, if not hundreds. So while first responders are at increased risk and have higher rates of PTSD and depression than the general population, given the amount of exposure that they have to traumatic events, first responders are an incredibly resilient bunch.
Every time that you step into the eye of oblivion and you wish to return, you must take nothing with you, okay? You cannot take the love of your children, wife, God, nothing. It's just you and oblivion. Because if you do, at the moment of truth, you'll hesitate. Boom! And the problem with situational PTSD is every time you step into the eye of oblivion, you bring a little bit of it back with you. And that's what's hard to live with.
I'm gonna tell my eyes not to see no colors, gonna turn my ears and not to take no lumps, gonna keep my head underneath the covers, keep my eyes on you, I don't need no others, throw away all my old letters, gonna sit in the kitchen and trim my feathers, got a picture of you to replace the sky, if I lose you in the crowd, sit down in the curb. To keep me from dreaming, gonna sip my wine and stare at the ceiling. I'm gonna keep my smiles in the bread box to get on and choke them down with water. When you leave me all alone, I'm gonna turn my eyes not to see no colors. Gonna tell